So now we're going to get started. So we'll just start with, so Kangaroo, we were talking a little bit. So I guess let's just start with this. So are you dating someone right now?
No, not currently.
Okay. And is that, how do you feel about that?
Kind of sucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very honest answer. What sucks about it?
I think it's that so most of my days I'm spending either working, learning something, studying, and it's kind of like always doing something alone.
Uh-huh.
Even when I'm, even when I'm working, it's usually things like I'm following a doctor around or I'm seeing a patient. But it's still just me on my own doing all that. Come home and I study in a room alone, get online. I'm still alone in the room, even if I talk to friends or something like that. It's still me on my own.
Okay.
So, and I've never had that experience of like having a real girlfriend, but I always see it and people, really seem to enjoy it. So it's kind of that idea of, I feel like I'm missing something out, but not.
And so it sounds like most of what you feel is lonely.
Yeah.
And so what do you think it is that's gotten in the way of you finding kind of what you see other people have?
I always thought it was just kind of where I was. At Rice, back when I was in college, that was definitely gaming. Like way too many games, did not go out, did not meet anyone. After that, it was just mostly just felt like work. Once I got into the master's program, into med school, it's like I didn't have time to even consider anything, or else I'd fail out of classes. Just tough.
It was tough, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. Med school is pretty intensive. Do people date in med school?
They do, yeah.
Okay, so how does that work?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Because you're saying that here you are in med school, and it's like it's hard, right? Like you learn a lot, and the pace is really intense. And so if we kind of think a little bit about what is it that prevents you from dating, your answer is, well, I work too much. But then there's a part of me that kind of pauses and thinks about that because, a lot of people work a lot,
right?
And they find relationships.
I think the way I see it usually is that in med school, you either come in with a relationship that you continue, or you find one within your own class, in a sense, with other doctors or maybe people you meet on the job. I just didn't think I found anyone like that.
Okay. So you haven't found the right person?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about having a relationship, your idea is that basically someone is going to come along and then it's going to click.
Well, kind of, I guess. I think it's the idea that I have to meet multiple people, but there will be some people I'll mesh with a lot more than other people. I just haven't met a lot of those types yet.
Okay, so you just haven't been able to meet someone that you mesh with?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that is? What goes into meeting people that you mesh with?
Going to do things that you enjoy that other people would be doing at the same time.
Okay. Do you do that?
I started to.
Like what?
Started to go into more like conventions, TwitchCon coming up, anime conventions, gaming conventions. Also going to a lot more medical conventions. Like I've been able to now travel for fourth year, and meeting different people at different hospitals has been other medical students outside of my own class. I think that's been actually helping a lot.
When was the last time you asked someone out on a date?
A month ago, actually.
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, interestingly enough, I didn't expect to ask them out on a date. It just felt like after the night was over, we did end up going out.
Okay.
We went to a movie, went to dinner, hung out for a bit. And after the night was over, I looked back and I was like telling a friend of mine, like, I met this cool person. I'm like, oh, so you went on a date? And it kind of hit me like, oh, yeah, I went on a date.
So did you ask her out?
I asked her to go hang out, but I didn't ask her as like specifically as a date.
Okay.
Like I just didn't think of. I didn't come to. I was just like, hey, you want to go hang out for a bit?
So what makes you think that was a date?
I think it was maybe just how much I enjoyed it, and like how it seemed like we both enjoyed it. We wanted to hang out again. Just I moved here, so I couldn't. But
so are you going to see her again?
I don't know. She's in San Antonio.
Okay.
So it'll be depending on how the next couple weeks go.
So I'm curious, does Twitch chat think that qualifies as a date or not?
Let's see.
We'll see. I don't know, but so let's kind of come back to so you. I mean, but you're saying that you kind of didn't really ask her out, right?
Right.
You just asked to hang out.
Yeah.
So unclear whether it was a date or not a date. So sometimes when it comes to finding a romantic partner, like it can be sometimes, I think a big piece of it is not understanding exactly what your relationship is with other people, like in terms of is dating or not dating, are you guys friends, is it platonic, are you getting friend zoned?
Yeah, that is hard to, it's hard for me to figure out. I've never been able to get that distinction unless I'm very explicit about it.
Okay.
And usually that's never turned out positively for me. Like if I've asked someone, hey, do you want to go on a date? Never gotten a positive response for that.
How many times have you asked that?
5.
Okay. And so, I would think that if someone has been, we're just talking about negative emotion.
Yeah.
If you put yourself out there and you've gotten burned 5 times, that it would make it very hard for you to ask a 6th girl out on it.
It definitely used to be like that, yeah. I think the more that I start realizing I want a relationship and I don't really care if someone says no because I can try it again, is the more I'm starting to do it more, ask more people out. Like, I think it was high school, asked out 2 girls, didn't go well at all. I didn't ask out anyone until my master's program, which was 5 years later.
Okay.
That didn't end up working out. And then the next time I did it was my first year of medical school. After that, I think I've asked 3 people out.
How did you feel about the one in medical?
That one partially worked out. We semi-dated for a bit, and I got cheated on. So that didn't work out very well.
So, the reason I asked that question, so this is great that this is on camera. I wish we could rewind on Twitch chat, and your facial expression was subtly very, very different for the one in med school. So, like, this is, so I think, I wonder if there's value in sort of going back and rewinding and even cutting, but I want you to watch it.
Okay.
There's just a tiny, tiny flicker of something that suggested that one was more emotionally painful. So if you got cheated on, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that one was not good.
Yeah. So and so, okay. So you've asked out a couple of girls. So I think one of the things that could be kind of, I'm kind of curious about is if we think about, what happened in high school. You asked out 2 girls. Like, what do you think it was that kept you from asking out girls in college?
Girls in college I just didn't go out and meet any. I was playing video games all the time with friends. So
yeah. So I think that's a typical answer that is probably a little bit incorrect that gamers do, right? So what I'm imagining is like, so let's assume, maybe you didn't go out and meet anyone. Yeah. Sure, you were gaming a lot. I was gaming a lot in college too. I still asked out girls and got rejected a fair amount. They're everywhere, right? Like, you're going to class and there are girls there, and you could have asked them out.
Yeah, if I wanted to, I could have asked them out. Definitely.
I don't buy that over 4 years of college you did not encounter and have interactions with girls that you did not find attractive.
I did, but I remember there were 3 girls in college that I found attractive. All of them had boyfriends, so I couldn't really ask them out. Okay.
So just to kind of think through this a little bit, like, so in medicine, we talk about differential diagnosis, right? So it's if there's a particular symptom, what are all the things that could be causing the symptom? So in this case, I'm just thinking a little bit about the symptom of not asking anyone out in college. So far, we've gotten 2 answers, right? Because the first one I pushed back on, and now Sahil tells us, it wasn't. So his first answer was, I didn't have time to ask anyone. I was playing too many video games. And when I press you, your answer changes.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you guys see that? Like, you see that how that happens? So, and his answer is, I wanted to ask them out, but they had boyfriends, so I didn't. Now that's like a very different answer. It's not that I wasn't attracted to people.
Oh yeah, no.
It's that they weren't available. But what you tell us, and probably to a certain degree what you tell yourself, is that it's because I was playing too many video games. And so the interesting thing is that, I see this a lot with gamers when we start to dig in and kind of really think a little bit about dating and why you ask girls out, in your case, it sounds like it's exclusively girls. but when you're sort of interested in someone, and like we come up with answers, but I would imagine I can just like put myself in my own shoes and just thinking a little bit about, you know, if I had asked two girls out in high school, like high school is a pretty psychologically fragile time. And, you know, if I'm asking two girls out and they say no, I think it's going to be very difficult from a confidence perspective to be able to ask girls out in college. Like it's going to take time or energy or effort or something is really going to have to change for me to overcome that hump. And the really tricky thing about that is that I'm not getting that sense from you. Like I'm not getting any, I mean, whether it was true or not true in your case, we're not really sure. But what I'm definitely not getting is any awareness of that fact, right? That what it was is maybe a lack of confidence. Like there were three girls you were attracted to. You know, it's, you know, not to say that you should try to interfere with someone's relationship, but sometimes people ask out people who are in relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not trying to put a value judgment on whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Or maybe it's disrespectful. But so it's kind of interesting. And then the other thing that I kind of want to fast forward to is you said something pretty interesting, which is that like recently you stopped caring. Can you share a little bit about that?
I think it goes to the confidence idea. I feel like I'm at a point where I guess I'm a good catch is what I'm in my mind. I'm a pretty decent catch, you know, pretty good guy overall, decent education, decent background, good, really nice family. You know,
very nice. Oh, wonderful.
So I don't feel like anyone would be missing anything dating me type of thing.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you guys notice how he didn't comment on his physical appearance?
No.
So what we can imply from that is that he may have some concerns about his physical appearance, right? Because when Kangaroo is talking about why he's a catch, he doesn't say anything about his physical appearance.
True. Yeah. I did used to think that a lot, really, but I didn't have a great self-image. I think it's been improving, but it's probably not where I'd like it to be yet. Yeah.
So the other thing is, would you feel comfortable talking about that, or is that?
Yeah, I don't mind.
What do you think about how you look?
Honestly, I think I'm a little overweight. Probably, like, you know, a little round in the face, a little squishier than I'd like to be, than I used to be. I think that's the main idea of it.
Okay. And when you say used to be, so has there been some, since there's been a change, do you feel like that's come with a change in your confidence too?
I'm actually not sure of that one. Most of the change happened second to third year of college. So I think I already had some confidence issues back then that weren't related to the way I looked. And they maybe evolved into, or maybe the look was pulled into that eventually.
Yeah. So, you know, that's a really interesting idea, because you're almost suggesting that the lack of confidence is the origin, and it's almost like a monster that like gobbled some concerns around your appearance. And so it's not necessarily that your appearance leads to a lack of confidence. It's that your lack of confidence is almost like this psychological entity within you that latches onto your appearance. And that's actually a really common way that the mind works, is that we tend to have feelings, and then what happens is our feelings will come up for justifications to make them feel more real. So for example, you know, there's some people that I work with that are quite attractive, but feel like they're not attractive at all. And what happens is they'll zero in on the tiniest, most irrational thing about their appearance, because, and it doesn't matter how much you argue with them, and you can say like, oh yeah, your nose looks fine, it's not too big, it's not too small, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that doesn't enter into them. It doesn't like so kind of sink into their head in any way. And
I get that a lot, actually. I get that a lot from my sister.
What do you get from that?
She's like, oh, well, I hate taking pictures of myself. I hate being in pictures. I don't like having pictures taken of me. And it's usually because, like, you know, I don't think I look good in pictures.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I look good on video sometimes. And I get it from my sister. She's like, "No, you're a decent looking guy. Why do you keep worrying about that?" It's like, "No, you look fine. Stop it."
Yeah.
And no matter how much they tell me that, like I understand it on like a rational level. I don't get it. It just doesn't sink in. No.
Yeah. So on what level do you not get it?
It's emotional.
Yeah. Right. And so case in point, right?
Yeah.
So this is where the tricky thing is that, we've talked a little bit about like rational versus emotional. So now I think we're going a little bit off topic, but hopefully this is okay. So now the question becomes, okay, so like you don't feel, so speaking of, well, let me just tie things together. So I do believe that part of the reason that you have not asked out girls is because you're concerned about your appearance, right? And I think that like the more we talk about it, the more clear it seems to me that you're concerned about your appearance. And the funny thing is you've made lots of like rationalizing statements. Like you've said like, oh yeah, I used to look better. But I would guess that even if I had talked to you when you quote unquote looked better, that you probably felt the same way that you do now. Right?
That would be true, yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that if we really pause and look at that, even though there was an objective difference in the way that you look, your feeling about the way you look is exactly the same.
Okay.
So now we come to another problem that a lot of gamers have, which is that, you think that there's a problem, which is that you don't look good enough. And so you try to improve your appearance. And there's definitely value to working out and taking care of yourself as a confidence booster. But I would argue that the root of the problem actually has nothing to do with the way you look, but has more to do with the way you feel you look.
Yeah.
And so then the question becomes, okay, so like if we can see that, what do we do about it?
I've been pretty much telling myself it's not true over and over again.
How's that working for you?
It's helping a little bit. It's
okay.
been helping. It's why I've been able to ask more people out, essentially. The more times I'm like, no, stop it, you're being dumb. Like every time that thought enters my head. I think it's weird because sometimes it's like, yeah, that is like, I'm a lot flabbier than I used to be. Yeah, that is true, but does it really matter?
Okay. So now, there's a subtle difference in that statement, right? There's a subtle difference between arguing with yourself in terms of invalidating the way that you feel. So if we think about this, like, let me just tunnel down and try to make this into like a math equation from a psychological perspective. So one is that I feel unattractive, and then I can argue with myself, right? I can say like, oh, but I've worked out and I got this new shirt and I like got this like $100 haircut. You can argue with yourself, and that can help a little bit, but it doesn't seem to help very much.
No.
And I would argue that most people who are watching sometimes have negative thoughts about themselves, and that they're actually pretty good at arguing against them. But despite arguing against them, that they still struggle with those thoughts. The interesting thing, though, that I think the reason it's become easier for you is because somewhere along the way, you didn't convince yourself that you're wrong. You stopped caring.
Yeah.
Right? So if we really like tunnel down into what Kangaroo said, he said, I stopped caring. Or it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so there's a part of you that's actually, if you really think about it, like, so you didn't mention appearance when you were talking about your positive qualities, but I think somewhere along the way, and I'd be curious kind of how you came to this conclusion, and we can sort of see that he's come to this conclusion because he started to realize that, like, okay, even if I'm not the most attractive guy, which he kind of accepts, it doesn't mean that I can't find a relationship. That I still have a lot of things to offer someone. I can be funny, I can be engaging, I'm intelligent, I'm a catch, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
So like that apparently is supposed to attract a lot of women. Not everything that it's cracked up to be. is if you guys are in med school, you'll learn that lesson the hard way. You still have to be a decent human being.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that?
What do I think about?
What do you think about, like, actually what's changed in you is not your perception of how you look, but that you sort of accepted that you may not be the most attractive guy, and it actually doesn't necessarily affect how you're going to find a relationship or whether you're going to find.
I think it's been nice. Like, it's kind of been freeing in a way. Just not just like a weight sitting on my mind anymore. I mean, it's still there just because I do see, like, my best friend just got married. Like, I don't have a girlfriend. What the heck is going on? But I think I just have so many things I'm doing right now that are going positively. I'm like that. I feel like it'll happen.
Okay. Do you think that so when your girlfriend, I mean, when your best friend gets married and you kind of think to yourself, I still don't have a girlfriend, do you also have the thought that maybe it's because I'm not attractive enough?
No, not in that case, really.
Okay.
Or I guess not. I don't know if that would have been the case in the past. Not anymore.
Okay. What do you think it is that kind of keeps you from having a girlfriend now?
Currently, I think it's just the amount of traveling I've had to do over the last year. I mean, been in the same city for no more than maybe a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
So if I meet someone, it's like, yeah, hey, we'll hang out for a bit, and then I'm gone to another city, another state.
Sure.
By then, I'm like, I might keep talking to them, I keep texting them, but it doesn't feel the same as as an actual relationship.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that is really hard. If we really think about relationships, a lot of times they have to start. I mean, you can do long distance, but
right.
Usually there's a pretty solid foundation
Mm-hmm.
before you kind of transition.
I think I've just been moving around so much that even if I found someone in San Antonio, I was only there for 4 weeks, and I met them the last week I was there. So at that point, I'm just like, all right, hi, nice to see you. Hopefully, we'll keep talking. Hopefully,
Are you still texting with her?
Yeah, I am.
How's that going?
Going well. We're both kind of doing a lot. So she's on third-year rotations, so she's always running around. So do you want to get text much?
Mm-hmm.
But we do text.
Mm-hmm. When was it that you started, or I guess I should say, kind of stopped caring as much about your opinion? Or maybe a better way to put it is, when did that start to impact you less in terms of you recognizing your value for a relationship?
Probably over the last 6 months. So I guess mostly after step 2 was over.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like the real big event, I guess.
Can you explain a little bit about what step 2 is?
Sure. So step 2 is our second licensing exam for a medical school. Can't get your degree without it. And one of the biggest exams of my life. So I think, yeah. So I had a lot of just a tough time with that exam overall.
Mm-hmm.
Long hours of studying. Again, loneliness hit again because in a room by myself for 16 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite time. My favorite 6 weeks.
Yeah. And so it sounds like the feelings of loneliness were pretty heavy during it.
During that time, step 1 as well, but first licensing exam, same thing. I think a lot of it got a little better during med school because I started studying with people.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I did like a master's program, and again, I had that same issue. Long hours of studying by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really enjoy that.
Do you think, do you remember feeling lonely in college?
I don't. No, not in college. I don't know if that was because I always had a friend group around me. Like, always had at least 1 or 2 people around at some point or the other playing video games or just hanging out reading or something like that.
Huh?
So I don't think in college I ever felt like that.
So interesting, right? Because now if we tunnel down into college a little bit more, it sounds like you were hanging out with people.
Yeah.
And yet, I guess, never encountered a girl?
It was usually the same group of people.
Okay.
I didn't go to a lot of club activities very much. I didn't do a lot of sports in college. I went to classes most of the time. We'll say most of the time.
I went far less. Most of the time.
Well, I didn't go to the parties. I wasn't a big drinker, so I didn't really like those big parties.
Do you think that not being a big drinker has impacted your ability to find?
I've never really considered alcohol important in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy maybe a glass of red wine, so I don't really. If someone's not okay, if someone has a problem with me not drinking, I feel like that's already someone I'm not going to be hanging out with in general.
Sure. So what was it that changed after step 2 that sort of you started to stop? I mean, you felt like you had value. It sounded like you got a confidence.
I think it was that like I had a career path, I had a goal, and I have stuff I'm working towards, and there's nothing that's gating me from that anymore. I'm not a kid anymore. Type of thing. I think that was the biggest thing. It's like I will have a decent career. I can make my own success from here on, and I'm not worried about basic supporting myself.
Okay, so it sounds like you got some degree of independence.
Yes, very much so.
And with independence comes some degree of like confidence in who you are as a person. Yeah, so I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's kind of like track through and try to see what we can learn from Kangaroo's kind of perspective and experience. So the first is that, Kangaroo has had some feelings of loneliness and hasn't been able to really have a serious relationship. If we really think,
did have ended up very badly.
Yeah. So if we think a little, oh man, I just want to rewind to that spot. I'm just like, I wish there was like.
Oh, because that one was frustrating. Like it was during the one of like our midterm exams too.
Uh-huh.
It was right after spring break or during spring break. We were fine up till spring break. She went abroad, found some guy there. I didn't hear about this for 4 weeks afterwards. Like she came back, ignored me for about 3 weeks. So I was like, what the heck's going on? Like I have no idea what just happened. And I hear 4 weeks later from her friend that she has a boyfriend that she found on spring break. And I'm like, it wasn't the problem of her getting the boyfriend. Like, fine, you found someone. Sure, you didn't want me. It was that I didn't hear from her for 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. She didn't have the decency to tell me for that long.
How do you feel about that?
I hated that. That infuriated me really badly.
Infuriated.
Yeah, anger.
Anger, right?
Yeah.
That's the. Yeah.
That was not a fun one.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing, if we're just thinking about this, is like, so I purposely have been waiting for Kangaroo to tell me more about that relationship without asking. Right? So like this is where, for a lot of gamers, like there are emotions that are pent up, but like, it just takes some, on the one hand, it takes some amount of like opening up to give you kind of a space to talk about it. But the other thing is that I actually don't have to ask you.
Yeah, that's true. It just wants to come out.
It just wants to come out.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, if we track back to the beginning of the conversation, we ask Kangaroo, like, why don't you have a girlfriend? He's like, oh, I'm too busy. But the truth of the matter is, like, that kind of stuff sits with you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that affects, like, there's no way, I mean, and hopefully the people on stream caught this, there's no way that is still eating.
Yeah, it does.
It's still eating, right? And people can see it. And the crazy thing is, when it comes to dating, like, you're not even aware that that's there. Mm-hmm. But there's so much there. It's like we popped a zit and the anger just comes right out. And it's like, this is what happened. And like, you remember the details, right? Yeah. She was gone for this many weeks. 3 weeks she was ghosting me. I heard from her friend that he had a boy. Like, you remember all the details and it's like seared in your mind. Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuff is going to affect you, right? It's going to weigh on things like your confidence. Yeah. Which then once your feeling of like lack of confidence like is there, then it's going to sort of latch on to other things, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more on that about how that works in terms of your psychology. But before we get to questions, so let's just kind of recap. So I think a couple of things for people who are watching stream. So the first thing is, Kangaroo, thank you for opening yourself up in a vulnerable way. If there are people who are watching stream and want to share something about their own lives, like we'd love to have you on. It can be anonymous or whatever. We can do it over voice chat. And if you guys are in the Boston area and you want to come to my office, you're welcome to do that. So thank you very much for sharing that. I think a couple of things that we can just think a little bit about in terms of what's relevant for gamers. The first thing is that if we think about how Kangaroo's mind works, he comes up with the most sterile reason first, in terms of why he doesn't have a girlfriend, and it's because I don't have time. And then, as things kind of evolve, we begin to see that there are like different reasons why he doesn't have a girlfriend. There's like more to it, right? There's a sense that he's actually like not a catch, which is changing now, and we'll dig a little bit more into like where confidence comes from and how you get confident. Right, because the big thing is that when you were in college and like, when you were asking people out and stuff like that, like you weren't confident. Something has changed within you. And the funny thing is it's not that you combated and overcame your idea that you're not like, you're an unattractive dude, which is what most people think needs to be done, right? If you think to yourself, oh, like I'm not confident because I'm unattractive, the gamer's solution is that I need to go to the gym and get swole. And once I'm swole, like then the women will line up. Yeah. Or a lot of what also happens is like gamers like go to like, so I saw this in med school where people think once I'm a doctor and once I make a ton of money, like the women are going to line up. Yeah. Not how it works.
Not how it works at all.
And so if we really dig down into it, we begin to see that there's some degree of like a lack of confidence, and also that there's some hurt, right? Like there's even like you can almost think about it like trauma in terms of you ask someone out, you put yourself out there and you get burned.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you kind of think about like a behavioral perspective, as you get burned, that's going to change your behavior and you're not going to ask someone out again.
Right.
Because you just don't want to get exposed to that hurt. And the other thing that we can kind of think a little bit about is he had this experience where, after all of like, lack of confidence and not having direction in life and all that good stuff, you still manage to find someone. And then what's it like when you manage to find someone and then they betrayed?
Yeah.
And so that too is going to also what impact do you think it has when someone gets cheated on in a relationship? I'm sure you feel anger, but what do you think it does to your confidence?
Oh, it tanks it.
Tanks it, right? And so the cool thing is that kangaroos sort of started to come out of it in terms of starting to recognize that even if he does have feelings that are negative towards his self-image, the really cool thing I think here is that he's somehow managed to figure out, it's not that he's realized that those are wrong, it's that he's starting to weight those less. So in the variable of the equation of am I a good boyfriend or am I boyfriend material, something has happened where kangaroo physical appearance has started to become like weighted less. So it's become a fraction of what it was.
I think I've seen interest in me, even if it's people I'm not interested in. I've seen people start approaching me more or respond, like if I'm talking to them or something. And I get a sense of, oh, they actually do want to talk to me more. Okay. Maybe I'm not so bad.
Yeah.
That's probably more of it, yeah.
I think so we can dig into more, unclear whether we're doing this again or not, but we may have someone else. But if kangaroo comes back, maybe we can dig in a little bit further into, how, because I think the funny thing is that if you just look statistically, people have been expressing interest in you since high school. That's just true. Like most human beings don't go 7 or 8 years without no one expressing interest. I think what happens with a lot of gamers is that they're so wrapped up in their own head that they're unable to see it. And so I think what could be going on with you is, it's sort of like, it's a little bit of like a chicken or the egg thing where someone expresses interest in you, you gain a little bit of confidence, you get less concerned about your appearance. And then since your head is less up your ass, you're able to see that more people are expressing interest in you.